Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast. Spoiler alert, we don't discuss conventional, linear, boring career change here. This is the place where we talk about finding an aligned career path that feels like an extension of who you are, where you get paid for being yourself. Forget personality quizzes, soul-crushing scrolling on job sites, and breaking your brain trying to find your why. Join me and many other career changers who've changed their career holistically by first defining who they are at their core and then using this blueprint to design a fulfilling career or business. We use the mind-body-soul approach, and we take into consideration the complexity and multidimensionality of all that you are and want to represent in the world. This is where purpose-led careers are born and built. I'm your host, Vilma Oseita. Let's go. Hello, friends. How are you all doing? Are you feeling the energy of the new year yet? Oh my goodness, I feel like so many of us are still tying up the final loose ends of the last cycle that we've been in for the last couple of years of sheddings and endings. And some of us have already stepped into this new timeline, which is so exciting. Speaking of timelines, one of the qualities of this time that I've noticed in my life, and definitely those around me, is how quickly and how potently manifestations have been coming into fruition. It's almost like you speak of it and it shows up in a matter of days and sometimes hours. So we're truly living the embodiment of be careful what you wish for, which made me think how when we go through these intentional transitions in life, for example, career change, how often we let either the logistics or stress or overwhelm take over, and how much we forget that main core principle and premise of creation, which allows us to turn things into reality. And it is starting with an energetic signature of that which we are calling in, and then staying in the receiving energetic alignment to make it a reality. Now, I will preface this with saying that I'm by no means a manifestation teacher. I never aspired to be one, but what I am is a very keen observer of this reality, and especially the energetic laws that guide this matrix, if you will. And I definitely have the privilege to have this front seat to many transitions, and I always study them. I take notes, I jot down, noting the difference and similarities between them. And this episode is dedicated to the part of the transition that many of us will completely skip, thinking that perhaps we don't have time for it, thinking that it's child's play, or that we should focus on charging forward and taking a lot of action, which is true, by the way. You know that I love inspired action. But what is really important is when and how we take that inspired action. It's the timing of when we take this action. And yet, in my humble opinion, this is probably the most important stage of any career change or launching a business or really calling anything into your lives, a relationship, the new country, a new home, whatever it is, because this stage, this practice that I want to share with you today is the precursor that will often determine how big and how quick of a change it will be for us. So, for example, even when I look back at my own story and the different chapters that my story unfolded in, I would say that the most sudden and welcome change would come right after periods of complete surrender, peace, and joy. And when I would cultivate this contentment around all that is, when I would not allow myself to worry about the future and all the possible doomsday scenarios, but when I'd rather focus on the reality that I'm calling in, on that being done, on working with the law of assumption, on practicing the feeling of having and being that already, when I would drop the need to know how or how likely, that's when I would see the biggest shifts in my outer reality. and things offers connections would just come in the most unexpected ways from many different directions and angles in the way I just could not have anticipated myself. Now, perhaps to some of you who are newer to this world of energy and frequency and heart and mind coherence, what I'm going to be sharing today and talking about, this may seem silly or cheesy or woo-woo, but I personally perceive cultivating the energy before taking action as a very practical and grounded hack, and it's a shortcut, if you will. There is so much research done, by the way. When I was kind of preparing for the episode, I looked into the Stanford research where they were looking into manifestation through the lens of neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, as you know, is the brain's ability to form new neural circuits through experience, through repetition, and through intention. So when we visualize our goals consistently, we're literally strengthening our brain's gray matter. We're strengthening the neural tissue that will help us learn and grow and become that which we're calling in. And by no means this is new knowledge, but because so many of you miss this part when you're preparing for career change or launching the business, I wanted to record this reminder for you and share my own practice with you so you could hopefully see it as perhaps an inspiration to create your own version for yourself. And like I said, this is kind of not absolute truth. This is me having tried for years. You guys, I'm in my late 30s. I've been in this world since teenage years. I was reading about law of attraction and practicing it, and I was reading Napoleon Hill's books, right? So I've been around the block. And my issue is that some of the more generalized or common advice, especially now that we live in the world where everyone is like a TikTok therapist or manifestation guru, no shade, no shade. But like, it's true, right? We have access on a lot of information that does not have substance, or we just repeat the same superficial rules and tips that we see out there. But again, a lot of it personally for me felt like it just wasn't working. And that's why I felt really called to record this, just to share how I broke some of the rules or how I found a way to, if you will, hack manifestation for myself. So when I think, again, going back to my story, as I was thinking about my story, just again, thinking about this episode, when my survival mechanism would kick into high gear, there are stages in my life, especially when I was in my transition in between work, like when I would be, hyper focusing on the confusion that I was feeling before the career transition. I was really wallowing and resisting what is. I was not capable of appreciating my reality because I was not happy. So my first instinct was to push it away and to resist it. And that's when I was experiencing the biggest stuckness and darkness. And it really just felt like there was absolutely, no change or opportunities in the physical world around me. It's almost like I was frozen in time. I was going through the motions and I was, now I know, right? Like recreating the same reality over and over again because I was focusing on what is versus learning how to work with the energetic frequency of what I want to call in. And those really were, without an exaggeration, some of the hardest and toughest moments of my life because it just felt like there was no way out. I was in a dark tunnel and there was no light at the end of the tunnel for me. And I really sincerely believe that me not choosing, not cultivating what I'm about to share with you today is exactly why my own career change took so long, over 3 years of active career change. And when I say active, I mean, I was taking active, I was getting confused, I was taking action, I was getting confused, but I was doing things, not just thinking about things. I was trying things within different career paths, right? Now, before I share these steps or more like my own practice, I would also love to remind you that noticing, reviewing, and reframing your belief systems or the thoughts that we think every day is such a vital part of any manifestation process. We can't create what our belief systems deem impossible. It's really just as simple as that. We can't call in things people, opportunities, money that we don't perceive as realistic. So having at least some sort of semi-regular thought practice, let's not romanticize, consistency is not possible, but as much as we can, our version of semi-regularity, whatever that looks like for you. But having that thought work practice is what can make such a massive dent in creating an aligned career, an aligned life, or an aligned relationship. And you already know if you've been here for longer than 5 minutes that I beat that thought work drum all day, every day, just because I've seen firsthand what a game changer it can be. I have 3 episodes on this podcast on thought work. It's literally called Career Change and Thought Work, I believe, and it's 3 parts 1 through 3. If you haven't listened to it, please do so, because I share very specific examples. I share the steps. You have it all there for you for free. And for those of you who want even more practical step-by-step approach to thought work, especially if you're in the middle of transition or you're struggling or you're planning to transition, I will be launching a mini course on how to do belief work and thought work to quantum leap in your career. And that's going to drop soon. It's going to be mini course, super affordable. I've been sitting on it for a while because I know that it's such a key part that so many people skip. Anyway, so let's chat about how I would invite you to work with manifestation. So I personally do this almost daily purely because it's so enjoyable and so much fun. And I feel like the first tip that I have for you, don't just follow steps mechanically, automatically if you do not connect with them. Reinvent the wheel. Find a way to achieve the same goal, but make it fun for you. Okay, and I'll give you more specific examples. So step 1, just like with many other practices, again, if you've been in this world, you've heard it, and I totally agree with that, but I do have my own spin on it. But first, what you want to do, you want to get somewhat clear on what you're calling in. So many of us say that we want a more fulfilling career, we want to feel loved, we want more adventure. But what does it look like for you? I cannot even tell you how many times I've had this conversation with my clients when we're, say, maybe in the blueprint process of creating their career DNA and covering their career blueprint. And I would ask them questions and they'd be like, I literally don't know what I want. So many of them would go blank because they're so inundated with what is and reacting to what is and living their life in reaction versus active and intentional creation that they literally go blank when I ask them about their dreams. So this is my invitation to pause and ask yourself these questions. If you want an aligned business, what clients do you want to support? What products do you want to create? How much money do you want to bring in each month? Where do you want to work? How do you want a holiday? When do you want a holiday? Where do you want to go? Right? We want specificity here because here's the reason why. And I feel like a lot of people will tell you like, oh, you need to be clear on what you want, but they don't tell you why. And I want to tell you why, because I'm the why person myself. If I don't understand why, I'm not going to do it. Specificity will invoke feelings in us. Feelings will change our energetic state and our frequency that we vibrate in. And that changed frequency will then start attracting people, events, and opportunities that vibrate in similar frequency. Because as you know, like will attract like. It's law of attraction. It's Bible. There is a verse in the Bible that says, if you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. So, and by the way, this isn't about religion or spirituality necessarily. It's about the power of this unwavering belief. It's about deciding that it's done for you. And when you believe something is already yours, you move through the world differently. Notice how the people would respond to your energy differently. You will make different choices. You will notice different opportunities. You'll bump into different people. I promise you, all it takes is waking up in the morning and deciding, play with the universe. Like sometimes what I would do, I would wake up in the morning and I'll decide to be like, okay, this is, for example, if I'm feeling like, I need a little bit of support, right? I don't depend on it. But for example, I'll be like, today I want to hear this compliment. Today I want to hear someone tell me these words because I'm feeling like that would make me feel good. Like I want to receive that today. And almost without exception, within a day or two, I'll have someone send me a message saying these things. I'll have someone from, my friends or family tell me these things, or a client would jump on a call and out of the blue, they'll tell me these things. And so I want you to try it out to see just how malleable your reality is. So you start feeling and seeing what the rules are so you can start creating and attracting what you want. For those of you who are a little more skeptical, I also want to talk to you and tell you what's happening in our brain and why it works. It's not all woo-woo. When we set a more specific and emotionally meaningful or charged goal or intention, what we're doing, we're programming what's called our Reticular Activating System, or RAS, and it's essentially like a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that acts as our brain's attention filter. It will distort, it will delete information if needed. So what happens in really simple terms, RAS will be scanning the environment for information that aligns with our goals and beliefs. That is why when we're thinking about buying, that famous example, a red car, you suddenly will see red cars everywhere. You got pregnant, you suddenly see all the pregnant ladies everywhere, right? You want to go blonde and you're a brunette. Suddenly you see every blonde woman on the street, which you haven't even noticed before, right? But the cars were always there. The blonde, beautiful ladies were always there, but your RAS now flags them as important. So in neuroscience, this is known as selective attention. You haven't changed the external world, but what you have changed is the filter through which you perceive it, making what was once invisible suddenly visible. That's why when you set a goal, for example, you're starting a business and you're like, okay, let me start a business. My goal is 10K per month, right? Very reasonable. So what happens when the more you think about it, the more you'll start noticing, oh, there's a podcast episode with this female entrepreneur who's making, who started her business and she started with making 10K a month, or she has 100K a month. And suddenly your concept of the world or your perception of what's possible is shifting of like, oh, she's done it. That means I can do it. And suddenly you start normalizing it. And then suddenly you start attracting ideas and people who can help you get there. Okay. So now, one hack that I do use, and this may be helpful for some of you, I will always list my intentions for the year. For example, I will do that in the Capricorn season. Capricorn loves planning. So usually in January, I will list my intentions for the year for different areas of my life. And I usually will track them and I will work on them throughout the year. I do monthly check-ins. I evaluate. I'd be like, what's working, what's not working. Okay. I hope that I would have time to study this, but I don't have time to study what needs to change, right? So I just evaluate. No drama, no judgment. For me, it's a very neutral practice. However, the issue is that I'm primarily visual, and actually most of us are visual. So just writing my goals or reading my goals or rewriting lists don't work for me, okay? Which is, again, a tip you see probably a lot out there, just like rewrite your goals every day. For me, it will quickly become mechanic and rehearsed. It becomes like muscle memory that takes over and I feel nothing. I just mechanically, numbly, just go into numb state and I will just rewrite things without feeling. So I just want to be done with the practice because it was on my list to do it, right? So I just want to be done. But often that will stop working really, really quickly. It's similar to me like with those empty gratitude practices where, again, often we're asked to spend 5 minutes daily writing down what we're grateful for. And it works for those of you who actually feel the gratitude at the end of the day in the morning. But if we don't evoke a feeling, it's like, it's a little bit like eating a bland dish, like with no spice or no flavor. So we may satisfy the hunger, but it won't have the nutritional value that we need. We won't feel, it won't release the dopamine. We're not going to feel enjoyment, satisfaction, and happiness having tried that dish. It's not going to be an experience for us. So what's the point of doing it? Okay. So what I do and what I found works for me much better is creating digital and physical vision boards for the year. Again, a very old concept, but I feel like I've noticed through my clients and talking to my friends how many of us do it again in the same way, mechanically, of like, okay, I'll spend some time at the beginning of the year, put some images together, and then I forget about it. Okay. The way that I do it, I learned how to do it with trial and error over many years, is I spend a chunk of time collecting images, usually on Pinterest, to represent my goals. Back in the day, we used to do magazines. People don't read magazines. I definitely don't read magazines now. So now it's Pinterest, right? So I will collect images that represent my intentions and goals for the year. With the money, whether it's friendships, whether it's travel, impact, whatever it is. I choose images. And that's a really important point. Not because something looks pretty to me. And that's a mistake I used to make for years. I would look for visually, aesthetically pleasing images that kind of looked at it and I'd be like, oh, that looks nice. Oh, like, I would like to have that, right? But a lot of the times there was no energy behind these images for me personally. Okay. So what I do now, I choose only images that move me. What does that mean? I look at the image and I could feel something stir in me. It's like the energy of that being true to me, that being the representation of my future self that already feels real in my body. Right. So like now, like I literally, as I'm recording this episode, I have my, I have my vision board in front of me. And I could take any little image and I can tell you exactly why it's there and how it makes me feel and how it almost like puts me in the future frequency of that already having happened. So what I do then, I make this my screensaver on my phone. So you guys know it, right? You can create Pinterest vision boards and then download the image and it can become the screensaver for your phone. And every time essentially I pick up my phone, I'm usually prompted to reconnect with one aspect of that image. So I'm constantly priming my brain, right? And normalizing the images that I have added there. Okay. And then I will also have a physical printed version. This is the one that I'm looking at right now that I keep around and connect with usually in the mornings when I'm kind of doing my morning routine. I spend a few minutes looking at it and feeling the feelings. Now, I know that for some of you, it may feel extensive, but I promise you, it literally takes several minutes a day, but it keeps that specificity alive. It keeps that front of your subconscious mind, not even conscious mind, but we're working with the subconscious here. And again, the mistake that people will make, they will create the boards and they will forget them, which is, also, by the way, I've heard that this is sometimes a manifestation technique, but I personally never got a lot of success with it because I'd still find old boards I created years ago. And while, there probably would be a few things that really manifested to a T, right? Like you look at the image, like I remember I wanted to manifest a photo shoot in this field of purple flowers and I forgot about it. And a year after, I literally had a photo shoot in a field of purple flowers. And it was so magical the way, because me and the photographer didn't really plan it. I love nature photography. You'll usually find me in nature whenever I do photo shoots. And we were just like, I got my makeup done. I packed a few like outfits and we were just got into a car and we were driving around and be like, "Wait, what feels pretty?" Like it was very spontaneous. And then the moment, and we just suddenly these purple flowers, I don't know what they're called in English, but we found this massive field of these purple flowers. And she was like, "Oh, I feel like we could catch some shots." And it was a golden hour, right? So it looked beautiful light. And I didn't even think of it, right? And then looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is to a T the picture that I literally now have. And there was no way for me to plan ahead of time. However, it was only a few things on those boards that I wouldn't connect with. Most of the things that I wanted, it wouldn't manifest. So I personally didn't have a lot of success with the method of, create it and forget it. That was not my success. Maybe for some people it works. Another mistake is choosing images or goals of what they think they should want versus what they actually want. Really check in. A lot of us have goals on autopilot. Oh, I want to get married, or I want to have kids, or I want to get a promotion. I want to have my business. I want to travel around the world. I don't want to work. I want to work. I want to live here. I don't want to live here. Review what you want. Some of the wishes and goals are outdated for you. Some of them are conditioned and programmed into you by the society of what you should want for yourself in this particular stage in your life. If you're 30 or over 30, you're not married, you're like, oh, I feel like I need to manifest a ring. Girl, do you want that ring? Do you even want that ring? Hey, before we continue, I want to chat with you real quick. If you're anything like most of the people in this space, you're probably someone who's drawn to so many different aspects of healing. Maybe energy work calls to you. Maybe you're interested in psychology and mindset. Maybe you're fascinated by herbalism or somatic practices. Maybe you're into intuitive development, or maybe you just love creating systems and frameworks to help others transform. Or perhaps you're someone who wondered, why can't I just pick one thing? Why am I interested in absolutely everything? So here's what I want you to hear. These interests that you have are not random. They are not a sign that you are scattered or that you are unfocused. They are breadcrumbs that are leading you to your specific medicine. And this unique combination of what lights you up, that's your signature. That's your unrepeatable, unique blend of gifts. And I've created something to help you make sense of it all. It's called the Lightworker Archetype Assessment, which is a completely free tool that will help you uncover your primary healing gifts and how you're meant to weave all of these passions together into your unique expression. It takes about 15 minutes to complete, and I've had already hundreds of lightworkers telling me that it was like finally finding the missing puzzle piece. Some laughed because it suddenly made perfect sense, and others cried because they finally felt seen for who they truly are. You'll find a link to the assessment in the show notes. I know that this is really harsh, but it's true. We need to review some of these things. Don't put together images on autopilot. Again, I'm saying that with a lot of love from my own experience. And another piece, don't add too many wishes. If we just plaster our vision board with 1,000,001 images, it becomes very overwhelming to look at and almost dysregulating for the nervous system, and it becomes hard to focus on. So you really want to be discerning here. And only put the images that speak to you, okay? Speak really to you, to what you want to create, that move you. And that means that you might need to spend a little more time going through all of the plethora and, so many of these different images that sometimes are similar, but one will speak to you and the other, you'll look at it and be like, well, that's a pretty picture. Also, sometimes what you want to cultivate or try is themed years. I noticed that themed years will work better. For example, this year, the focus maybe is on your career or business launch, or maybe it's a year for your home, you're moving home or moving states. Not to say that other aspects, other wishes won't come true, but when we laser in on that particular area, I feel like manifestation is more potent. It's almost like we have more inner resources, more energy directed at that area of our lives. So yeah, these are some tips that I have for you. So whenever I personally feel called, I will take a goal or a dream and I will journal on it and I'll go into detail. I'll let the words flow, which puts me then in this elevated state. However, I don't do it daily. I only do it when I feel called to write. And that's not necessarily my daily practice when it comes to dreaming. I do thought work and belief work as a daily practice. And I do that in writing because it works so much better. And I'm a big fan of writing. But the whole idea that I have here for you, the suggestion that I have for you is find a way to reconnect with your dreams in a way that works for you. And that doesn't feel like another heavy to do, another step into already overwhelming routine. For example, some people will attach the vision boards to the bathroom mirror and look at it while they're brushing the teeth in the morning and in the evening. So find your way. Okay, next. So once you have those priorities, goals, dreams listed or visually represented that make you feel something that connect with you, and find a way to reconnect and revisit them semi-regularly, somewhat regularly. And again, we're not looking for perfection here. We're looking to create a mini practice that feels like second nature and is actually enjoyable for you, not a chore. Another piece that I feel like I need to give a little caveat here for those of you who actually struggle to access feelings in the body. And there's going to be sometimes, from my experience working with clients, sometimes quite a high percentage of people who can't access their body. Perhaps you've suffered from burnout and you're recovering now, or perhaps you've spent majority of your childhood in chaotic and unsafe environments. And as you know, living in that activated sympathetic nervous system, when that sort of fight or flight becomes your status quo, that's all you know. And then conjuring the feeling by looking at images and goals may be much harder for you, because when you grow up in this chaotic, unsafe environments, your nervous system becomes conditioned to exist in this heightened state of scanning the environment and detecting threats. So it can't relax. Okay. And if that's your case, please offer yourself some grace and patience. I would still work with imagery or words, but I would lower my expectations to change my state in a few minutes. For those of you who are not connected to the body, where your body went offline because of the trauma that you've experienced, or when you spend too much time in misaligned environments, the same happens, the body goes offline. For you, embracing a practice like that, it will be like learning a new language. So you want to probably prioritize regulation. You want to prioritize cultivating safety and presence and reconnecting to your body like that first. And you probably want to lower your bar. So instead of asking yourself to feel abundant, which is again something that a lot of teachers will tell us to do, maybe you want to aim for feeling slightly less anxious. What a fantastic goal. I just want to feel less anxious today. Or instead of, I want to embody my dream career identity, maybe you want to go for, let me just imagine one positive thing about tomorrow. Or instead of high vibe manifestation walk, something that I do, and I'll share with you how I do my manifestation walks. Maybe you want to aim for a 10-minute walk where you notice 3 things that you see. It really looks as simple as that. So I want to make sure that I'm also mentioning that and honoring that some of you are in that recovery space, and that's perfectly fine. You can still embrace with practice, but embrace it in a way that actually is supportive versus putting pressure on yourself to be where you're not. Okay, cool. So then the next step, what we want to do is we want to find moments during our days to bring ourselves to the state of ease and presence and joy and acceptance and flow and enoughness. Okay, we want to get into that state. And good news is we don't need to wait for our life to gift us presence or reasons to be happy. We can intentionally create those moments for ourselves. We can step into that energy willingly and intentionally, because what happens when we live our life in reaction, as you know, we will be observing what's happening and allowing that to dictate how we feel and how we respond, versus being the creatives and creators ourselves and deciding how we're going to feel in each moment. Now, a hack here, or perhaps another misconception that there is, that there's one main uniform way to get into that state. There's not. There's absolutely not one way that works the best for everyone, because there are so many variables that will determine how our intricate mechanism works inside of us. And it will be all the way from our ancestral footprint. So for example, if we're coming from lineages that were persecuted, or lineages that repeatedly experience war, which probably is the majority of us, we might struggle with feeling safe in our body for no reason at all, except that this is something that is passed from generation to generation and is part of our DNA. So from ancestral footprint all the way to early developmental trauma, which, as you know, will alter our brain development and can lead to lifelong cognitive, emotional, and even physical health challenges, right? And all the way to our maybe adult relational experiences that will affect our sense of worthiness and our ability to attract. So this means that as opposed to, again, blindly following what we're told will bring us to this elevated feeling states, we need to experiment what works for your unique body and what works perhaps for this season of your life, because we're also going through seasons of our lives. What worked for me when I was a teenager or in my 20s is not necessarily what works for me now. Okay. So whatever it is that could quiet our mind and allow us to drop into our heart and feeling, this is what we're looking for. So for some of us, it will be meditation. Okay, that's something that we get recommended a lot by a lot of mindfulness teachers, is to meditate, whether it's guided meditation or not, or us just sitting in silence. It will allow us to exit that endless cognitive narratives, those loops, that chatty monkey brain, and drop into here and now. And hence, we can then enter that state of reception or receiving. Okay. For some of you, it's going to be breath work, which is a somatic practice, which is nervous system regulation practice, right? So focusing on different breathing techniques, we will activate our parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest, which then will counter the stress response, because stress response puts us into fight or flight, into survival mode. In the survival mode, we can't dream, we can't visualize. That's not the goal of that state. The goal of that state is to effing survive, okay? So different breathing techniques can shift our nervous system state. So for example, maybe you can extend your exhale longer than your inhale, and then that will allow us to stimulate the vagus nerve, which will help us bring us out of that fight or flight, like I said, into the state of calm, or into a state of calmer experiences. And that physiological shift will make us more receptive to visualization and in general to receiving or perceiving a different future and possibility for ourselves. Journaling, I already talked about it. So sometimes journaling will put us in a state of flow. Listening to music is a huge one, okay? Music, as you know, will engage multiple brain regions simultaneously, which is why it can then bypass our thinking mind and drop us straight into an emotional state. That's a huge one. As you know, there are so many experiments made. For example, I personally cannot listen to certain type of music because it feels like discord in my body. It feels so incredibly distorted. It feels like, I don't know, I'm getting visuals and it's very hard sometimes for me to find the right words, but like what comes to mind is the experiment that probably many of you are familiar with the Japanese scientist, Emoto, I'm forgetting his last name now, where he was doing experiments with water and basically exposing water to different words and exposing water to different music, and then freezing that water after it's been exposed and checking the water molecules, the crystals and the formations that they make, and they would look at it through the microscope and take pictures. So for example, if there was a glass of water exposed to, I don't know, heavy metal or like really aggressive music, the water crystals would show up like in this, what's the word? Like discombobulated, is that a word? It would be just messy patterns that were not really patterns, they just look like chaos in a picture. And then, for example, it would expose a different glass of water to some of the really popular classical musical pieces, and the water crystals would form these beautiful snowflakes and this most elaborate perfect balanced formations, right? And because we're made of water, that means we're the same. So we need to be very intentional with what we're consuming with our ears, especially through music. So I personally now, like what gets me going is I love Afro beats. So I love everything that has a good bass line, because I feel like that kind of like activates my root chakra, that allows me to ground. That's something that I continuously need to work on, is grounding. And then I found this kind of like subgenre, if you wish, for spiritual Afrobeats. I posted about it on Instagram some time ago, where basically these are spiritual channeled affirmations put on an Afrobeat. So basically for me, it's kind of like activating my upper chakras and my lower chakras. So I feel like connected, and that music puts me in such a delirious joy and abundance, and like it's done energy. It completely shifts my state. And even if it's like several minutes a day, it's already enough. We don't need to have an illusion that we can stay in that like high receptive state all day, every day. Unless we're using substances, that's not possible. That's not realistic. We're not talking about that. We're saying, can you do it for 5 minutes? Can you do it for 10 minutes a day? Same with dancing. When we dance, our body will release what researchers call the happiness cocktail. So dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and there was one more, I think endorphins. So dopamine, as you know, is our reward and motivation chemical. We get motivated when we get dopamine hits. Endorphins are our body's natural painkillers, and they will create the feeling of euphoria or like delirious joy, like I said. Apparently, that's what causes also the runner's high. I've never experienced it, you guys. I'm not a runner, not a fan of running. But I do experience when I dance, and serotonin will regulate our mood and will help prevent anxiety and depression. And I was reading a pretty recent research that showed that dance was more effective at easing depression symptoms than any other form of exercise. Isn't it wild? So again, what is it for you? What is it for you? You really need to ask yourself and try. Maybe it's morning pages where you are free writing for 10 minutes and just free flowing and downloading all of your dreams onto paper. That's a great way to do it. Journaling works for so many people. I have a lot of colleagues who are avid journalers of their dreams. So that puts them into that state. Maybe it's a specific playlist that you keep on creating that transports you to that space. Maybe it's sitting in silence with your tea and petting your cat. Maybe it's breath work, maybe it's cold plunges or running, whatever connects you to that frequency of presence, abundance, and it's done. And the keys, like I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself like a broken record, is finding your way. Not the way your favorite influencer swears by, not the way I do it, not the method that worked for your best friend, your unique energetic access point, depending on where your body is at and depending on what activates it. Okay, because some of us, like I said, are kinesthetic, so we need the movement. So I don't want you to feel bad if meditation doesn't work for you, or if you're not in a state where you can do active visualization. Try to achieve that state through movement. Okay. And by the way, because as you know, this is a podcast about career change and launching aligned businesses, I really would love to invite you to do this practice specifically for this new career or this new business, no matter what stage you're in. If you're still thinking about it, that would be the best place to start. And I know that a lot of people will tell me like, Vilma, I don't have time for this. For those of you who have full-time jobs and families, I know that time is really, really a scarce resource for you. But if you ask me if there was just one thing that you advise me to do, I would say this. Is finding a daily practice of connecting with your dream and then putting yourself in that state of receiving and presence in the body. Because from that space, you will start attracting ideas, resources, and people to help you with your career change. I would actually, and I know that sounds maybe counterintuitive for you, but I would actually, if you have only like 30 minutes a day to start working on your career change, I would actually dedicate it to this. At least at the beginning stages, not strategy, not taking action. And I will talk about an action in a minute. So basically, again, find your daily practice. It doesn't have to be longer than 5 to, 15 minutes a day. Morning is great because, as you know, in the mornings, our subconscious is very receptive, especially in the first 90 minutes after waking, like around 90 minutes. So you might want to work with that. Or before bed is great too, as we're drifting off and our subconscious is programmable. But honestly, whenever you can semi-consistently show up is really the right time. So again, let me just summarize a very simple, if you want to call it a formula, or at least the way that I work with it. So first of all, you want to find a way to connect with those dreams, whatever that you have, whether it's a vision board like myself, whether it's a list of goals and intentions that you have. So you want to reconnect with that, step into that, okay, what would it feel like it's done, okay? And get into the energy first, whether it's moving your body, of dancing. Like I dance about my goals. I know it sounds completely wild. I dance about my goals. Like that what puts me in that state. Or put the music that makes you feel abundant, do breath work to shift your nervous system, whatever gets you out of anxiety basically into joy. And then feel it as done. Not mentally, not in your head, but like try to drop into the body. Close your eyes, drop in. Feel the relief, the excitement, the freedom of having that dream career or business. Feel the satisfaction of serving those ideal clients or customers or producing that product that you're so proud of, that everyone is buying and sending you thank you messages. Feel the security of consistent income flowing in. Feel the pride of doing work that matters. Let those sensations move through your entire body as much as it's accessible for you. And again, if you are like, Vilma, but I don't know what I need to do or what is aligned with me yet, it doesn't matter. You can still access those emotions and focus on the feeling of those different sensations without necessarily knowing what you'll be doing. I know it's weird, but trust me, you can totally access that because it's about the energy. It's about the frequency. And then when you are in that elevated state, ask for guidance. What's my next aligned step? What idea wants to come through me today? What do I need to connect with? Who do I need to connect with? What action would feel joyful right now? Really step into that. And when you're in that space, that's when you want to notice what comes through, especially if it sounds wild or weird for your brain. Maybe it's an urge to email someone you haven't talked to in years. Maybe it's a random idea for a blog post or offer. Maybe it's an impulse to learn a specific skill. Maybe it's a feeling to reach out to a particular organization. Notice what comes through. So as opposed to you sitting there in your stressed out, overwhelmed brain, trying to create a business plan or a transition plan, I would rather have you do this, get into that state, and from that state, listen what the next aligned step is, because from that state, you are attracting the exact idea that will take you from where you are to that vision board that you have. That's your bridge getting into that energy. And I will say that frequency, meaning how often you will do that, does tend to matter more than the duration of the sessions. So I would say that in my experience, 5 minutes daily will beat you spending 3 hours on this on Sunday, because that consistency or semi-consistency rewires your brain faster than intensity of the session. Okay, so even 60 seconds of embodying your future self will count much more than you trying to sit there for hours. Because again, remember how we rewire our brain. The main principle of neuroplasticity is intensity and repetition. That's why you will hear me talk about thought work, especially in the thought work episodes, where I ask you to record those new beliefs and listen to them daily as you're going on your walk, whatever you're doing, because we need intensity, emotion, and repetition. Okay. But if you're still struggling, I want to share with you a couple of questions to help you create the vision, to help you get a little more clear on where you're going. So for example, when we think about this new career business, is what does your calendar look like on a typical Tuesday? What does it look like? How do you introduce yourself when you meet your new people, when you are already in this new career identity? What does my bank account balance show? What is my investment account like? Maybe you don't even have an investment account. Think about all the investments that you can make. Think about your portfolio that you can create. Think about how often you're going to receive the money. Think about you can create money and say that every month my income is consistently growing. How do you feel on Sunday evening when you're thinking about the next week and Monday morning? What stories are you telling about your career or business when you meet people now, or you meet someone that you haven't met for a long time? Really get in there and start thinking, because these specific sensory-rich details will activate your reticular activating system much more powerfully than those vague wishes of oh yeah, I want to be happy and fulfilled. How much money do you want to earn? People sometimes tell me enough. I'm like, girl, what does that mean? What is enough for you? For some people, 100K a month is not enough. So what is enough for you? We need to get specific, and then we can increase those amounts as we go. As we grow our belief, we can increase also the amounts of money that we're calling in, but we need to start somewhere. Okay. So if there is, like I said, that one thing that you have time for, that your brain is telling you shouldn't spend time on, I would do this. It's being in the energy of it's done and really feeling it. Not mentally visualizing, not thinking about it, not necessarily even needing to plan for it, but feeling it in your body as if it's already real. And when you feel it in your body as done, as if you've already lived it, that's when the magic happens, because your nervous system has already registered it as safe, as familiar, therefore achievable. And from that place of embodiment, the right actions, like I said, will become obvious. The right people do show up. The right opportunities appear. Inspired ideas will show up. And from that place, we can then take inspired action, which will which will feel like the natural next step. It will feel organic. It will feel like duh. It won't feel willful or strenuous, right? It just will feel like flow. Okay. So if some of you are still skeptical and you're like, listen, I don't have time for this, Vilma. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to transition. My invitation is this. Let's make a deal. Try this for the next 7 days. Just 7 days, and I want you to commit to picking one practice that gets you into that elevated state: music, movement, breathwork, journaling, sex, whatever it is that works for you. No judgment. Do this for 5 minutes daily. If you want to, sometimes what works is same time and same place, because then again, we're priming our brain to expect that this is what's going to happen next. So we're more receptive to the practice. And then from that elevated state, feel your dream career is done. Feel that dream money is done, whatever it is that you're calling in. And then notice what ideas, what impulses, what opportunities show up, and take a very small step, small aligned action every single day towards it. That's it, 7 days. And see what will shift. Because I promise you, if you do it, you'll start creating more change in those 7 days than perhaps you've created in the last 7 months. Because you're starting to work with the law of this reality, which is whatever we create within will experience and observe outside of us. So whatever I believe that I deserve, whatever I believe my reality is, this is exactly what I'm creating or recreating if I'm not intentionally choosing what thoughts to think, what dreams to cultivate, right? The life will be, and circumstances and other people and society will be creating and dictating my life for me if I do not take responsibility for what I want, when I want it, how I want it, who I want it with. You get the point. So thank you so much for staying with me. It's a little bit of, like I said, it's not necessarily about strategy, but I feel like if we skip this step, strategy becomes much harder. But if we really learn how to cultivate this practice, strategy doesn't effing matter, because we will be told, we will receive ideas what to do next. So all we need to do is be in the state, and the next step will always come to us. I'm known for my own practice in aligned business, how many times when I would work with other mentors or business coaches, when they would tell me what to do, a lot of the times I would do the opposite, or a lot of the times I would get into the state and have the wildest idea where I'm like, let me try this. That feels good. That feels fun. That feels easy. And usually takes really quickly for me to implement. And that's usually the ideas, the offers that will be the most quote unquote conventionally successful, or get the most feedback or response or messages, whatever it is that I'm calling in at that time. So yes, please try that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for believing that something more is possible for you, because it is. Take a good care of yourself and get dreaming. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast and leave a quick review to help us share the message of aligned work with the world. And if you'd like to learn more about how to find and transition into your very own purpose-led career or business that feels like getting paid for being yourself, make sure you check out the episode notes below. Have a wonderful week.